are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here. On this Friday, July 12th, we have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get into what we're going to talk about for today. So we're going to talk about more on the verdict regarding the Sunday ticket. We'll get into what Roger Goodell had to say. I know I talked about that before I went on vacation a couple weeks ago, so I wanted to get into it again, just what Goodell had to say. So that'll be how we start off the show. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the news of Bill Belichick joining inside the NFL. So we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about some comments made by George Kittle on the Brandon Ayuk contract situation. So I'll give you my thoughts there. We'll talk more about Davante Adams and his thoughts on the quarterback battle with the Raiders. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Leonard Fournette, some possibilities of where he could maybe sign, whether it's, before the season starts, probably during the season, I would imagine, maybe. So we'll get into that as well. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Roger Goodell and his comments on the verdict. So obviously I went over this like a couple weeks ago before I went on vacation. So in regards to the Sunday ticket, so the NFL could possibly have to pay, around, between like $12-15 million in terms of class damages, whether to both subscribers and to businesses, because of the cost of the Sunday ticket. Now, this case started way back in 2015, which I really had no idea that this has been going on for that long. But so the NFL has obviously appealed it. So this is going to continue. This isn't going to be over anytime soon. And I just wanted to talk about what Goodell had to say. So this is what he said recently via Pro Football Talk. He said, well, we obviously disagree with the jury verdict, and we are committed, obviously, to following the legal process. It's a long process. We're aware of that, but we feel very strongly about our position. Our policies, particularly on media, that we make our sport available to the broadest possible audience. Sunday Ticket is just a complimentary product, so we're committed to following the litigation all the way and making sure that we get this right. And their argument is that the price reflects what fans are getting from Sunday Ticket, saying it is a premium product. And yeah, I mean, I know I went over this, like I said, a couple weeks ago, and we still got a long way to go with this, but I know when I talked about this, there were things that the NFL could do to make it, I guess more affordable for some people, so they don't have to pay for the whole package. If they want to buy, a certain division or their team, so they don't have to pay for that entire price. That might be the way to go. But it doesn't seem like, based on Goodell's comments, that they're going to, change that. Might stay the same. But I'm really interested to see where this ends up going. But I feel like there's got to be some kind of change. I mean, there should be the option for the whole package. And then, if you want, like I said, if you want to, like, buy for certain teams or your own team, you should be able to do that. Because, yeah, I do understand that it's not fair for a fan that, is not in the area of their team. They don't want to have to buy the entire package just to watch their own team. They want to be able to just focus on their team and their team only. But I don't know. Based on Goodell's comments, it doesn't seem like that's the case. They're going to try to keep this, the way it is. But yeah, right now, it's around, like I have on the segment title here, $4.8 billion. But because of the kind of case that it is, it could be triple that. Which is why I said it could be around 12 to 15 billion that they're paying. And that is a dent in the NFL's pockets. But the NFL is a cash cow, and even if they have to pay this, they're going to be able to survive it. It's not something that's going to set them back. But it's definitely interesting, and we'll see how it all plays out. But this isn't ending anytime soon. And, I'm curious to see when this will in fact end. But, the fact that this has been going on since 2015 is crazy. So the NFL appealed the decision. So the hearing is going to be July 31st. And the appeal is going to be made to the Ninth Circuit. Yeah, so it's just going to be a constant cycle. And eventually we'll get to a final decision, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Now, the case includes around 2.5 million residential and commercial customers from 2012 to 2022. So that's a 10-year time frame right there. So, yeah, it is interesting. And, this is, outside of, football itself. This is, off the field stuff. This is, we get into the thick of, court cases and things like that. It's just, it is interesting. I know in our production meeting, before I went on vacation, I made a joke. I'm like, just make the Sunday ticket free. Just make it free. Now, they're not going to do that, but, I understand the price of it, but, I'm not going to pay that for the 4 months. It's not, I think I could afford it, but I'm not going to do that. That's why I opted to, to pay for the student discount, because it was $100 for the 4 months. That's fine with me, but, any more than that, then you have to pay a couple hundred. It's like, I'm not going to do that. So, but I understand. You're kind of restricting, you're kind of forcing your customers, you're restricting them to watching whatever's on their local CBS or Fox channels. And, it might be games that aren't that entertaining. For me, being in the Northeast, I'm stuck watching the Jets and Giants every week. And the Giants are my own team, and I don't even want to watch them. I said this before I went on vacation. There was one week where I was home to watch the entire slate. My Sundays are different now than they were, when I was still in school. But working, I'm not home. And the 1 week I was home, it was Jets Falcons, in that terrible weather. And I forget what the score of that game was, but it was very low scoring. Some of my friends wanted to actually go to that game, and I said, no, I'm not going to that game. I'm not watching. I forget who even started for the Jets that week. Either way, whoever was starting for the Jets against, Desmond Ridder, I'm like, I'm not watching it. I'm not going to sit in that. I'm not going to that stadium and watching that game. And especially because the weather was bad. So what did I do? I ended up, because I didn't buy the Sunday ticket, I ended up just watching Red Zone. And that was more entertaining than having to sit through Jets Falcons for 3 hours. The one thing I'll say too is they should have two. If you don't get the Sunday ticket, this is a separate thing. They should have two games airing at the same time, both in the early window and the later window. It shouldn't be 1-1. Now there are times when they double up, particularly the last game of the last week of the regular season, because of all the playoff implications. But they should have two games on at the same time. It shouldn't be 1-1. I understand, if depending on if it's Fox in the later window or if it's CBS, they want you to tune they want you to tune into Nance and Romo, or this year it's going to be Burkhardt and Brady, because that's usually what it ends up being in the later window. Sometimes, they could have one of the B or C teams in the later window, but still, normally it's the A teams. But they should still have another option. Just in case maybe the other game's out of hand, you still have another option to go to. It shouldn't be 1-1. It should always be 2-2. But there's a reason for that. But you could always go to Red Zone. If you have Red Zone, you just go to that. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. But this, I just wanted to bring that up. But this is something, like I said, it's going to continue. We don't know when it's going to end. But when it does, we'll make sure to talk about it. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And if the NFL has to pay, triple the money that you see on the show segment here, yeah, that would be that'd be wild. But we still got some time to go, so we just gotta play the waiting game until a final decision is made. But let me know what you guys think about this whole thing. What are your guys' thoughts on the Sunday ticket package? What were your thoughts on what Goodell had to say? Obviously, he's going to say that they don't agree with the verdict, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So we'll see what happens. But we're going to take our first break now of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about Bill Belichick joining Inside the NFL. So I'll get into that, give you my thoughts. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Bill Belichick, set to join Inside the NFL. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch a single episode of Inside the NFL last year. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of disappointed with Inside the NFL because it's not, what it used to be. It's a completely different cast. There's no more James Brown and Adam Shine and Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason. It's a completely different thing. You got Ryan Clark, Chris Long and Chad Johnson. And no offense to those guys, but that's not my inside the NFL. My inside the NFL is, on HBO. This isn't the inside the NFL. So I'm disappointed, and many people I know agree with me. But Belichick will be joining it, and the season starts August 30th. This season of Inside the NFL starts August 30th. Belichick is thrilled to join this, and I think this is a good thing for Inside the NFL to, hey, Belichick's going to be on it, so that'll give you more of an incentive to tune in. But along with that, though, Belichick is going to be on the Pat McAfee show. He's going to make weekly appearances on that, and he's also going to participate in the Manningcast as well for 10 games and likely one wildcard playoff game. So we could sit here and say, well, Belichick doesn't have a job coaching, but he's going to be breaking stuff down a lot. You're going to see him a lot. So he might not be on the sidelines, but he's going to be on your television screen quite a lot. Quite a bit. And you know what? I'm happy for him. Because I'll be honest, I know things did not end well in New England. I get that. But I think he still deserved a job. I mean, this is arguably the greatest coach of all time, and he's without a job. And I get it, the age, and again, how things ended in New England. I understand that. But that does not mean that he does not deserve at least one more shot. I mean, I think there are some coaches right now, I would take Bill Belichick over them in a heartbeat. There's a few you could go through and say, yeah, I would take Belichick over him. Like, I'd take him over Dan Quinn with the Commanders. That's one situation there. Honestly, even with the Jets. Now, it wouldn't have happened. It's not going to happen, but you're telling me you would take Robert Saleh over Bill Belichick at this current moment? I would take Bill Belichick. So like, I mean, that's just two. I'm not going to go through the entire league, and again, Belichick to the Jets is not going to happen. But I would take Bill Belichick over Robert Saleh. And no offense to Robert Saleh, but it's just, I would take Belichick right now. Belichick and Rodgers, they have an admiration for each other that, I think that could work. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, Belichick is going to be a part of the NFL season, just in a different way. And, he also was involved with that all-time team that they were making, that all-time team show that they were doing on NFL Network with Rich Eisen and Chris Collinsworth. Belichick was a part of that, and he was talking about, some of the greatest players when they were, drafting this or putting together this team, this all-time team. Belichick loves to talk about football. That's his life. And he's been around the game for a long time. And, from the comments that I saw, on some of the stuff with Pat McAfee, him being with the crew, people are saying they like this version of Belichick. He's looser. He's not, just guy goes to the podium and you can't really hear what he's saying. Well, no, you can't hear it. It's just, he's mumbling through a press conference. He has no interest in talking to the media most of the time. At least, from some of the interviews you'll see. This is a more lively version of Belichick, and I think people like that. That's also like when Tom Brady left New England and went to Tampa. Everyone was like, wow, we love this version of Brady. No, I shouldn't say everybody. Because, you still got the Tom Brady haters. You still got the Bill Belichick haters. Those are still going to be in effect. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just you leave New England, the Patriot way, that stays there, and you go elsewhere, and you could kind of just, relax a little bit. But I don't know. It's a new era in New England, though, and it is going to be really weird. Not seeing Belichick on the sidelines, not seeing Pete Carroll on the sidelines, and even going to college, too. Nick Saban's not going to be on the sidelines. It's going to be really weird. It's a changing of the guard. It really is. I mean, we saw that with all the quarterbacks retiring. Now you're seeing it with the head coaches. But for me, though, I still think Belichick deserves a head coaching job. And I think Mike Vrabel deserves a coaching job, too. I don't know how they didn't get hired. Well, I mean, with you could kind of see maybe why. But, I mean, I still think that a team should have picked them up. But we'll see what happens in the next head coaching cycle. Because, you're definitely going to see some firings. There are some coaches that, their seat's a little warm. Now, just because that's the case and these coaches end up, if some of these coaches end up getting fired, will they, will these guys get hired? I mean, you look at Doug Peterson could be on the hot seat if the Jags don't, if the Jags don't make the playoffs, he's probably gone. Mike McCarthy's probably gone in Dallas, so maybe, Belichick goes there. Brian Daboll and the Giants. If the Giants end up finishing with another horrible record, it's possible. Maybe even the Eagles too, because I know some Eagles fans are not happy with Nick Sirianni, and you got all this talent. You end up having another collapse again. He could be on his way out. And I'm naming all the teams in the NFC East. Maybe Miami too. You never know. I don't think of the guys I mentioned, I think Mike McDaniel is still safe. Unless the Dolphins have like a horrendous season, which I don't think they're going to have. So, there's going to be openings. Maybe not every single team that I mentioned. I think the Eagles are going to be really good, so I think Nick Sirianni's fine. But, if they have another collapse, if they don't play well up to their expectations, then it's possible. But, yeah, Belichick is going to be busy, though. And you know what? I think it's a good thing because there's definitely a part of him 100% that, he still wants to coach. And, if you're sitting on your couch doing nothing the whole year, you're going to be depressed. There's going to be you're going to be depressed a little bit. So you want to keep yourself busy. And he is really keeping himself busy. And he's got 3 jobs basically now. Manning Cast, Pat McAfee, and now Inside the NFL. Maybe I'll watch Inside the NFL. Yeah, that upsets me. What happened with Inside the NFL? I don't know why. It's something to do with TV rights or broadcasting rights, but it's just when you had most of the CBS crew doing it, that got you hyped. And I don't want to I don't want to bash the guys that do it now. It's a great opportunity for them, but I'm somebody that just doesn't like change. And even when it comes to inside the NBA, we're not gonna see that anymore. That's because I think NBC bought the rights to it. There's gonna be no more TNT, so we're losing inside the NBA as well. You still got inside the NFL, but it's just it's not the same. It's not the same. So, but I just wanted to touch upon the Belichick stuff. So he's going to keep himself busy. You thought, man, we're probably not going to see him. No, we're going to see him. We're going to see him a lot this year. And even if he's not on the sidelines coaching, he is going to be on our television screens quite a bit. So we'll see how he does. But, people, there's positive feedback, with him. So we'll see how it goes. So you got him, and you got Tom Brady, who's going to be in the broadcast booth. And Fox actually announced the broadcast team. So Greg Olsen is going to slide in with Joe Davis, the B team with Fox. So, yeah, I feel bad for Greg Olsen because I do like him as an analyst. I think he does a good job. But it's Tom Brady, and you really got no shot against that. And they were not going to do like a 3-man booth. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on Bill Belichick joining inside the NFL. Before we go to break, though, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about George Kittle and his comments on the Brandon Ayuk contract situation. So I'll get into that when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about George Kittle, his comments on the Brandon Ayuk contract situation. And look, I'm going to say this. We just want this to get resolved at some point. I mean, I really want it because then it gives me something else to talk about as we try to get to the preseason, which we're getting closer to that. We still got a few more weeks, but we still got some time to go. So what's interesting now is, I spent the last pretty much month doing schedule breakdowns. So I always had the graphic, but we're going to include a Brandon Ayuk graphic right here, just to kind of give you his 2023 stats, just so we have that in the background while we talk about George Kittle talking about Brandon Ayuk and the contract situation. So yeah, I mean, I've gone over Ayuk's stats a handful of times from last season. So yeah, 75 receptions last year, over 1,300 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. But this is what George Kittle had to say on the Brandon Ayuk stuff. So he said, I think if you look at my career being a 49er and the way most of the contracts have gone, I didn't get signed until the second week of training camp. Debo was pretty late. Bosa was the first week of the season. That's just how business is done out there. I'm not in the meetings. I have no idea. I actually go out of my way to not talk to anybody going through contract negotiations. So when people ask me questions, I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. But this is what he said about Ayuk specifically. I'm not concerned about it. Ayuk's a phenomenal football player who's a big part of our offense, and he's one of the most complete receivers that I've ever played with. So I'm going to assume that Ayuk's going to be on our team by the time the season starts. So George Kittle has confidence that a deal's going to get done. And I thought it was. I think it's interesting with what he said. About certain timelines. You had Deebo Samuel. He got signed late. Nick Bosa got signed. When the season started. So, who's to say that the same thing doesn't happen with Brandon Ayuk? It could happen. Like Nick Bosa, it could happen week 1, around that time. And you kind of you hope for that as a 49ers fan that this gets done. Because I losing Ayuk, yeah, that's gonna hurt. And you got some young guys that you're gonna try to break in, Ricky Pearsall, and the other guy too that I keep forgetting about, and I bring up everybody else. Jawan Jennings, he got a new contract, and played well in the Super Bowl. It was really one of the main parts of their offense because he threw a touchdown and he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl, threw the one to McCaffrey, and then he caught one late in the game. But, Brandon Ayuk, he is, go back to 2021 where, the beginning of the year, he was having no impact on games. And then later in the season, he got out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse and he started playing well. 2022 was solid. Last year, his best season. You don't want to lose him. And, the 49ers, they have one of the best rosters in the NFL. But the problem with that now is you got all these guys that you got to pay. And you're not going to be able to keep everybody. How many times do I say that? Most of their guys have new deals. But there's guys that are going to need new deals after Ayuk. Specifically, Brock Purdy. So they're going to have to find a way to figure it out. But, George Kittle's a guy that's, I think, he's a positively spoken man. He's a glass half full kind of guy. And, based off of what I was watching with Receiver the other night, episode 1, and when he was, they showed the clip of him, after the first loss to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And he said, how he's going to be back. He will be back here. And, the 49ers did make it back to that point. It's just they didn't get it done, unfortunately for them. But you know what? It is interesting with what he said, though. IU could get paid right when the season starts. So, we're not going to know until something is official. Whether he's traded or, they end up getting a new deal done. It remains to be seen. But even without Ayuk, yeah, I think you have enough weapons on the offense where, you're going to be fine. But I've brought this up numerous times. Last year when they had a couple of injuries, to Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel, the 49ers struggled. Brock Purdy struggled. That's what I worry about, is how is that going to affect Brock Purdy? Now, George Kittle's talked about Brock Purdy, and they think he looks great. And, if he could take his game to a new level, that would be, that only helps the 49ers. I don't know. I don't know how much better you can do. But, if you're missing some of your key guys and you're still playing at a high level and you're limiting the turnovers, because that's something that became a problem when, guys started getting hurt, was, he's throwing some interceptions. That's the thing. If you have to overcome that kind of adversity, people are going to notice that. Now, I think Brock Purdy has overcome adversity. You go back to the playoffs last year when they were down, to the Packers and the Lions. They could have easily, especially the Lions, that deficit. The Niners could have easily mailed it in, and, the Lions could have went to the Super Bowl, but they didn't. They still kept playing, and some plays went their way. and the momentum changed, and they ended up back in the Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl, I get it. Christian McCaffrey was the focal point of that offense in the Super Bowl. But, Deebo Samuel, who I know got banged up in that game, George Kittle, Ayuk, you got to get those guys more involved. They each had, right, Kittle had 2 catches, and Deebo got hurt. But yeah, Deebo and Ayuk, they each had 3 catches. You got to get those guys more involved. But, that game is, we're long past that. And we're still waiting. And I really hope that eventually the two sides come to an agreement and we can move past this. But yeah, we still got a few guys that are, looking for new deals. You got him, you got CeeDee Lamb looking for a new deal. Something's got to happen at some point. But we just got to continue to play the waiting game. And the 49ers, they have their price. Ayuk has his price. Now it's all about meeting somewhere in the middle. Can they do that? Or are the 49ers going to be forced to trade, one of their top receivers? And it's just, I'm tired of this back and forth. Ayuk posting something on TikTok, talking to Jaden Daniels. They don't want me. Then he's watching Commanders film, and he's posting stuff on Instagram. It's just, I just enough already. Let's get something done here. And he wants to stay with the 49ers, but he wants to get paid. And you see that all over sports. Like, there are guys that want to stay with their team, but ultimately, some of them, most of them, want to do what's best for them and get the top dollar. Now, I don't think Ayuk is going to become the highest paid receiver. The 49ers can't afford to do that. If he's looking for, money that Justin Jefferson got, the 49ers can't do that. Because they have all these guys already that they're paying. And like I said before, that's what comes with being having one of the best rosters in the NFL. Is you got all these great players, but you have all these great players, you got to pay all these great players. And some of them you might not be able to keep. Got to let some of them go. So, I don't know. This is another thing that's going to continue to drag on. But any little thing that comes up, we'll talk about it. But, it's just at this point, can we get to a resolution here? Whether it's he gets traded or they can agree on something, let's figure it out. But doesn't seem like we're going to get to a resolution anytime soon. So we just got to continue to play the waiting game. I know you guys are probably sick of it. I'm sick of it. We want to get to something. We want to get to a resolution here. But I think, for me, I'm against players holding out. I think after the Le'Veon Bell situation, well, you know what? I shouldn't say. Let me rephrase. I'm not against players holding out. I'm against players holding out for an extended period of time, because I think because of what happened with Le'Veon Bell, when you hold out for the whole year, you're doing yourself a disservice. Like, if you miss a few, like Jonathan Taylor, he wanted a new contract and he missed the first few games of the season. Okay, Chris Jones missed the opener against the Lions last year for the Chiefs. Like, okay, like if you miss 1, 2, 3, 4 games, because you're looking for a new contract. All right, but you can't be missing any more than that. Like, half the season or even the whole season, like Le'Veon Bell. It's just it doesn't end well. And that's why, for me, I always think back to Le'Veon Bell because he was not the same player. Now, part of it was he went to the Jets, and Adam Gase didn't want Le'Veon Bell, and the Jets wasn't the best landing spot for him. And that's why, you saw him playing for the Bucks for a second, and the Chiefs and the Ravens even. He just wasn't the same player. I holding out for the whole year, that set him back, and he regrets it. But again, we're not at that point yet, but I don't know. The way things are going, if they don't trade Ayuk and they might not come to an agreement by the time the season starts, it's possible he does hold out and miss some games, but we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about that. Hopefully we get to an agreement at some point. So we are going to take our next break, and when we come back, we will talk about the quarterback battle in Vegas. We'll talk about Davante Adams' comments on it, and I'll give you my thoughts when we return from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to talk about Davante Adams once again. We talked about him yesterday, but he talks about the quarterback battle that is going on in Vegas between AidanO'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and that's definitely a quarterback battle to keep an eye on as we get to, training camp, preseason, and of course the regular season. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. So this is what Davante Adams had to say. He joined FS1's Speak, and he said he doesn't have a preference for who should win the starting quarterback position. And he said, I want whoever is going to look the best when it's live bullets. All right, that's an interesting quote there. So at the end of the day, I don't have a preference other than I want somebody that's confident and ready to go when it's time to do it. So whoever that is, that's who I want throwing the ball. He also said, I think right now, if I had to say, I think Aidan has the job because obviously he was here before, and that's the way that it was. He was running with the ones more until Gardner comes in and takes the job away from him. I think it's Aidan's job right now. He's doing what he's got to do to hold on to it. We've got to keep working and do what we've got to do to grow and get better. We can definitely get better than where we are. He and I, our connection, him individually, even me, at this point in the year, this is not where you are going to show your best. So throughout camp, when we really start throwing the pads on and doing the real deal, I think that's when we'll be able to decide who the guy will be, which I agree with. And I'll continue to keep working and getting that camaraderie with that person. So right now he believes that it's AidanO'Connell's job to lose, and it makes sense because AidanO'Connell was on the team last year. Both guys actually, in their playing time had around, similar completion percentages. It was like, they both had around 62. Minshew had a little bit more touchdowns. I think O'Connell had I was looking at their numbers last night. So O'Connell had like 12 touchdowns to 7 picks last year. Minshew, a little bit higher touchdowns. Just wanted to pull it up quick. Minshew, like I said, he had 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So he had more interceptions, 3,300 yards passing. I mean, for me, I think my preference, I would say Minshew. But I mean, Aiden O'Connell did an okay job when he stepped in after they benched Jimmy Garoppolo. But yeah, I mean, I do understand where Davante Adams is coming from, because Aiden O'Connell was there last year, and the Raiders, they ended up finishing with a more respectable record last year. They finished 8-9. As opposed to, I mean, it looked like they were going to finish with one of the worst records in football, the way they were going. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is not something that's going to be decided right away. And I think ultimately, Antonio Pierce is going to make the best decision for the team. I think, like, for me, like I said, I think you take Gardner Minshew. But that's not my decision to make. And Aiden O'Connell already has an idea of what the offense is. He was there last year. But ultimately, it's got to be who gives them the best chance to win football games. And like I said, for me, I'd probably lean towards Gardner Minshew. But again, that's just me saying that. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the Raiders to decide what's best for the team, and they will make that decision. And here's the thing. Whoever struggles, the other guy's going to get an opportunity. I don't think the Raiders have the answer long-term on their roster. I've said that a lot. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting whether they, maybe target someone, because, Dak Prescott could become available, and the Cowboys are not going to franchise tag him if they, don't come to an agreement, which, the way it seems like, he's not going to be in Dallas. Because I think the Raiders have, right now, a good enough team where, if they could get, a quarterback that's a difference maker, this team is going to be a problem. Because you saw the defense improved last year. I mean, I talked about it a lot. The playmakers that they have on offense. I feel like they just need a quarterback. I mean, and, we got to see how Antonio Pierce is over the course of a full season. But, you get the right quarterback in there. There's no reason why this team shouldn't make the playoffs. I think with a good enough quarterback. Maybe if things flame out in New York, Aaron Rodgers says, you know what, I'm going to go play with Davante Adams in Vegas. Because there was a recent soundbite, I think, of Rodgers saying, I can't wait to play with him again, talking about Davante Adams. Now, you could say, oh, that means, no, with the Jets. No, I don't think so. Maybe they reunite somewhere else if it doesn't work out with the Jets. Which, I do want to see it work out, but, based off of what happened last year, I'm a little nervous. But I said I'm going to take the optimistic approach with the Jets this year. So, I'm going towards the eye of the storm as opposed to running away from it. But, yeah, with the Raiders, I mean, like I said, Dak Prescott could become available. I mean, I don't know. Because Aiden O'Connell, he was okay, but he doesn't strike me as a franchise quarterback. Gardner Minshew, I think, is just a career backup that can come in and win you games. I don't think Gardner Minshew is someone that's going to start over the course of a full season. Now, basically, he did with the Colts, but I don't know. I think you're kind of limited with Minshew. And I don't think Minshew's a bad player. It's just I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I think we kind of know what he is. He's a guy that could come in and he can win you games. If he's in the right situation, like with the Colts last year, he was in the right situation. He also had to fill in for Jalen Hurts. Because I forgot that he was with the Eagles as well. He filled in for Jalen Hurts. And actually, did they lose both games? both games a couple of years ago when he had to fill in? Because I know they've lost that shootout against the Cowboys, and then they lost at home against the Saints. Yeah. You know, for me, he's not, like I said, he's not a franchise guy. But, you know, I think he's arguably the best backup quarterback in the NFL. You know, and I think, like I said, he can come in and win you games. But, you know, you're kind of limited. You know, you're not gonna. I don't think you're not gonna win a Super Bowl with Gardner Minshew. Now, because I said that, clip that, and then when he does win the Super Bowl with the Raiders, then you come back to, you know, you come back to this, and say, "Yep, see, no, he's." I don't see it, but I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. You know, and I think whoever ends up starting, I mean, listen, you got solid weapons to throw to. The backfield is something that I'm curious to see how that goes. You know, like, you know, Zamir White did a nice job filling in for Josh Jacobs last year. Now, how is he going to be? Alexander Madison's coming off of a rough season with the Vikings. You know, he was going to take over as the lead back. Well, he did take over as the lead back for Dalvin Cook when they let Dalvin Cook go, but that didn't pan out. You know, turnovers were an issue. You know, it was a disappointment. But, you know, change of scenery, you know, who knows? But, you know, based off of last year, I think, you know, Zamir White, he should be the starter. He should get the bulk of the carries. So, but yeah, I mean, either way, whatever quarterback ends up starting, you know, you got weapons. And, you know, I think you're going to be backed by a defense that is probably going to be one of the best Raider defense that they've had in years, honestly. But that's just how bad the Raiders' defense has been. You know, and you know, even with Khalil Mack, I mean, you have to go back and look, but I mean, Khalil Mack was a force with the Raiders, but I mean, I guess that's probably maybe one of the better defenses they've had was when, like, during the prime years of Khalil Mack. But yeah, the Raiders' defense has been rough. You know, and I think last year, you know, things kind of changed, you know, when Antonio Pierce took over. So, we'll see. You know, I think this team is heading in the right direction. I just feel like with the quarterback position, I don't think they have their franchise guy yet. Now, I don't know how they're going to end up getting that guy, but we'll see. You know, I had them around 7 wins this year, which is, you know, a slight downgrade from last year. But who knows? Who knows? We'll find out soon enough. But let me know what you guys think, though, about this quarterback battle. I know I've talked about this, you know, in previous shows. You know, who do you think should win the quarterback battle? Do you think it should be Gardner Minshew, the newcomer to the Raiders, or do you think they should stick with AidanO'Connell? I think it's safe to say that you are going to see both of these guys during the regular season. Both of these guys are going to be playing. Now, obviously, during the preseason, yeah, that's a given. But I think during the regular season, you will see both quarterbacks. You will definitely see both quarterbacks. But that's just my opinion. So we are going to take our final break of the show now. When we come back, we will talk about Leonard Fournette. Because I know he's made some news. We'll talk about him, where he could possibly sign if a team needs him, possible destinations for him. We'll get into that when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, one more time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, and where he could possibly sign. Right now he's not on the team. And, he got signed late in the year with the Bills last year and didn't really, make an impact. He's on the practice squad. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority. I'm kind of surprised that he, didn't get picked up by anybody after, leaving Tampa. Because, all right, I got to change things up here. But I don't know. I thought, he had a big role in Tom Brady's last year in Tampa. I mean, Brady was checking it down to him a lot. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority, but this is Leonard Fournette's stats, courtesy of Pro Football Reference. So, yeah, last year with the Bills, only played in 2 games, 12 carries for 40 yards. But, yeah, the previous year with Tampa, only 668 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, the offensive line was not very good. But if you look at this is what I'm talking about. Look at the receptions and the receiving yards. He had, over 500 yards receiving, 73 receptions, 3 touchdowns. Now, a lot of it was checkdowns because the Bucs offensive line was not good that year. Yeah, and then, you go back to 2021, he was solid, 812 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns, got hurt. Of course, he's a guy that's been injured throughout his career. But, yeah, I mean, his best season was, with the Jags. He only had 3 touchdowns, but he did have, 1,100 rushing yards, and he had 500 receiving yards as well. But you know what? He is on the older side. I understand that when it comes to the running back position. But I think he deserves at least, a role where he could be a complimentary back. He's not a guy that's going to be an every down back. I mean, look, we got guys like you see Latavius Murray is still on teams, and he still, at times can produce. You're telling me Leonard Fournette can't be on a roster? I mean, maybe it's going to be like a similar situation to last year where, a team like the Bills signs him late in the season. But, with the Bills, he really didn't have an impact. So, but yeah, I mean, he's, right now he's 29, I believe. So yeah, I mean, he's getting up there in age, and, that's what happens with these running backs. So we'll see. But I'm looking at actually on Sleeper, the fantasy app, and Leonard Fournette intends to sign with new teams soon. He hired his former agents to help in his pursuit. So, we'll see, who that ends up being. Maybe I pick him up just to have another running back. But, whoever he goes to, I mean, he's not going to be the main guy. I mean, there's the possibility, maybe there's, you got Dallas, the Patriots, the Colts, the Chargers. These are some teams that maybe he could go to, at least from some of the articles that I was reading. I mean, Dallas, I mean, they're going to be running back by committee. Because Ezekiel Elliott they brought back, but, he's not the same Zeke. You got Royce Freeman there, Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle. It's going to be running back by committee there. So, and maybe they, I don't really see Fournette fitting there just because they got so many backs. I mean, none of them really jump out at you, but I mean, Zeke does because of the name, but he's not the same Zeke that he once was. The Patriots, like I said, they're a possibility maybe. He actually, they brought him in for a visit. I forget what year it was, but it was one of the years, while Brady was still in Tampa, and it might have been, was it 2021? They brought him in for a visit. It was either 21 or 22, but he ended up signing back with the Bucs. You also got the Colts. Right now they have Trey Sermon and Evan Hall behind Jonathan Taylor. There's no more Zach Moss. He's now with the Bengals. So, maybe they bring him in, back up Jonathan Taylor. I don't think that's bad. You got the Chargers as well. I mean, you got the Ravens backfield with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. You got Kamani Vidal and Isaiah Spiller as well. So, maybe that's another spot for him. I think at some point he will get signed if there's an injury that occurs. But, yeah, I mean, right now, he's still a free agent. But I just read on Sleeper just now, he intends to sign with the team soon. So I guess maybe he is getting offers, but only time will tell. But yeah, I think those days of him being the lead back, it's not happening. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a complimentary piece. And I think on a team that has a good offensive line, and maybe I think he wants to go to a team that has a chance to do something. I don't think he wants to go somewhere where the team's rebuilding. I don't know. Maybe he comes in and he could do well in the role that he's given. But I mean, maybe I'm speaking more positively when it comes to Fournette. But I don't know. I think playoff Lenny's got a little bit left in the tank. I also think Dalvin Cook has a little bit left in the tank, if I'm going to be honest. I know he looked horrible with the Jets last year, but the Jets had one of the worst offensive lines, and Breece Hall was healthy. Breece Hall was the lead back. I think if Dalvin Cook, you put him in a better situation, I think he could give you a little bit of something. Because I really have a hard time believing that his last year in Minnesota, where, yeah, you could kind of see that he's, not the same as he was. You could see the fall off a little bit. But I don't think he just fell off a cliff. I think it's hard to say that when he was playing for the Jets last year. But, that's just me. I mean, maybe he doesn't get that shot. And, if any of my friends are watching this, they're probably thinking, well, you know why you're saying that? Because you wanted him to go somewhere and do well because you traded for him in Dynasty. Which I plead the fifth. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Fournette deserves a spot on a team. Now, who's that team going to be? Well, I gave you some possibilities. But, only time will tell. And, like I said, his better days are behind him. But, I mean, to be like, a number 2 back or, somebody that comes in, could at least, take the workload, some of the workload off of, a number 1 back. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good role for him. But he's got to get signed first. So, but that's my opinion on it. I mean, he's in great shape, and it seems like, he's got a chance to join a team. So, I mean, if he just wants to play, and he doesn't care what destination it is, okay. But, I mean, I think for him, maybe he wants to go to a contender. He probably leans towards doing that. And, he's got a Super Bowl ring with the Bucs. So it's not like he doesn't have a championship. But, yeah, we'll see. But those are some teams that at least I saw. You have the Cowboys, Chargers, Colts, Patriots. Maybe it's a team that we didn't talk about. It's possible. But, yeah, but that is my thoughts on Leonard Fournette. Let me know what you guys think, though. Where do you think he deserves to be signed by another team? Do you think this is it for him? If you do think he deserves to be on a roster, what team do you think would be a good fit for him? Let me know in the comments. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. The ESPYs were last night. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'm going to try to get to it at some point. I know Lamar Jackson, his play in the AFC Championship game where, the ball got batted up in the air and he caught it off the rebound and it looked like he was going to take it to the house if he didn't get tackled from behind. That one, best play. I know I went over it yesterday. Patrick Mahomes won best NFL player. So, if there's anything to come out of the ESPYs, that came out of the ESPYs that we can cover. I'll make sure to talk about it. Watch some more of The Receiver on Netflix, and then of course we got the Hard Knocks episode coming out on Tuesday, so I'll make sure to get to that next week as well. I'll try to recap every episode. So far we've done the first 2. Episode 3 should be juicy because we're gonna find out more of the Saquon Barkley situation. So and I think we'll get to the Brian Burns trade. So yeah, and look, I know a lot of these topics, it's getting a little repetitive with certain things, with guys looking for new contracts and things like that. But rest assured, we will get to a point where it's not repetition, where it's just we're talking about a new thing every day. We're talking about games. That's what we want to get to, and we will get there. It's just we kind of gotta get through the off season here, and at least thankfully for these series that are coming out or already have come out, that gives us more things to discuss here. But we'll get there. We'll get there. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back again on Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to check out all the other shows, of course. We got other stuff going on around the sports world. So, give the other show some love, like I always say. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. And, make sure to enjoy the weekend. So, that is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again on Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.